The moment Lena Jo stumbled through those frosted glass doors, she knew two things. She was in the wrong room, and her life was about to change forever. What she didn't know was that the man standing there, water dripping from his shoulders, eyes like shattered ice, would become both her greatest challenge and her only salvation. This is a story about walls we build to survive, and the courage it takes to let them fall. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ping that mocked everything Lena Jo was feeling. She was 23 minutes late. 23. The kind of late that gets you fired before you even start. The kind that confirms every terrible thing people assume about someone who showed up to a billionaire's corporate tower wearing shoes she'd repaired with superglue and carrying a portfolio folder held together with hope and duct tape. Fifth floor executive suites, the security guard had said, barely looking up from his desk. Lena had nodded, too anxious to process the directions properly, too focused on the fact that her carefully ironed blouse, the only professional one she owned, already had a coffee stain blooming across the collar from the subway incident. Some businessman's grande latte, now decorating her chest like a badge of catastrophe. The elevator had been glass. Of course it was glass. Rich people loved their glass elevators, loved watching the world shrink beneath them as they ascended to their climate-controlled kingdoms. Lena had pressed herself into the corner, trying to make herself smaller, invisible, as other passengers entered and exited. A woman in Chanel had wrinkled her nose slightly. A man in a suit that probably cost more than Lena's annual rent had shifted away. She was used to it. The doors opened on the fifth floor, and Lena practically fell out, clutching her folder and the ancient laptop bag that had belonged to her father. The hallway stretched before her, all pristine white marble, and those weird modern art pieces that looked like someone had thrown paint at a canvas and called it genius. Translation department, she muttered, speed-walking past identical doors with frosted glass panels. Her phone was dead. Of course it was dead. She'd forgotten to charge it last night after spending 4 hours studying Mandarin contract terminology, so she couldn't even check the email with the actual room number. The first door said, Executive Strategy. Wrong. The second said, Legal Affairs. Also wrong. The third door was unmarked, but through the frosted glass, Lena could see what looked like a reception area. Maybe someone there could help. She was already catastrophically late. A few more seconds wouldn't make it worse. She pushed the door open. The first thing that hit her was steam. Thick, warm steam that smelled like eucalyptus and something else. Cedar, maybe, or sandalwood. The kind of smell that belonged in expensive spas, not corporate offices. Lena blinked, confused, as the fog cleared slightly. Marble. Smooth, pale marble everywhere. And water. The sound of water running. Oh no, Lena whispered. Oh no, no, no. Who the hell are you? The voice came from her left, low and sharp enough to cut. Lena spun, and her folder exploded open, papers scattering across the wet marble floor like autumn leaves. And there he was. Adrian Vale. She knew it was him, even though she'd only seen his picture once, in the employee orientation packet she'd skimmed on the subway ride over. But photographs didn't prepare you for the reality of Adrian Vale, didn't capture the way he seemed to take up more space than his body should, didn't convey the particular quality of his silence. He stood beside what appeared to be a private hot tub, water still dripping from his shoulders and chest, a white towel wrapped low around his waist. His hair was dark and wet, pushed back from his face, revealing features that would have been handsome if they weren't currently arranged in an expression of pure fury. Lena's brain short-circuited. She was staring at her new boss, her billionaire, notoriously private, famously intimidating boss. Half naked. And what she now realized was his private spa. Her voice came out as a squeak. She cleared her throat, tried again. I'm so sorry. I'm looking for the translation department. I'm new. I'm late. You're in my private bath, Adrian said, each word precise and cold. How did you get past security? The guard said 5th floor, executive suites. I thought. Lena was backing up, trying to gather her papers, but they were getting wet. The ink already starting to run. Her resume. Her carefully prepared writing samples. Everything she'd needed to make a good first impression, now dissolving on this man's bathroom floor. Executive suites are East Wing. This is the West Wing. Private. As in, off limits. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Lena crouched down, trying to salvage what she could, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold anything. One paper slipped from her fingers and landed directly in a puddle. She watched her translation of a Tang Dynasty poem, the one she'd spent 6 hours perfecting, turn into an illegible blur. When she looked up, Adrian was closer. He'd moved without sound, and now he stood over her, water still beading on his skin, his expression unreadable. "Stand up," he said. Lena stood, too quickly. She swayed slightly, lightheaded from panic and the steam and the fact that she'd skipped breakfast because she couldn't afford both breakfast and the subway fare. "What's your name?" "Lena. Lena Joe. I'm supposed to start today as a translator, but I'm late, and now I've—" She gestured helplessly at the mess. "I'll clean this up. I'll leave. I'm so sorry. Lena Joe." Adrian repeated it slowly, like he was filing it away. His eyes were gray. Not blue-gray or green-gray, just gray. The color of concrete, of storm clouds, of things that don't bend. The Mandarin English specialist. "Yes." She was still clutching her soggy folder. "Yes, that's me. I'm really very qualified. I know this looks terrible, but I promise. You're 25 minutes late to your first day." 27 now, probably." The words slipped out before Lena could stop them. Adrian's eyebrow rose a fraction of an inch. "Do you think this is funny?" "No. No, sir. I think this is a disaster." Lena took a breath, forced herself to meet his eyes, even though every instinct screamed to look away. "I think I just ruined my best chance at a decent job. I think I'm standing in my boss's private bathroom while he's in a towel, which is definitely not covered in any employee handbook I've ever read. And I think if I don't get out of here in the next 30 seconds, security's going to drag me out, and I'll have to explain to my landlord why I can't pay next month's rent." "Well, Something flickered across Adrian's face. Not quite amusement. More like recognition, maybe. The kind of look you give someone when they've said something unexpectedly honest. "The translation department is on the 7th floor," he said. "Not the 5th. The guard gave you the wrong floor." "Oh." Lena felt her face burning. "Oh, that's just perfect. Take the elevator to 7. Turn left. 3rd door on the right. Ask for Margaret Chen. She's the department head." Okay, thank you." Lena started backing toward the door, still clutching her ruined papers. "Again, I'm so sorry about all of this. I'll go now." She turned, desperate to escape, but her foot caught on the edge of the wet marble. For one horrible, suspended moment, Lena felt herself falling backward, arms windmilling uselessly. Then Adrian caught her. His hand closed around her upper arm, steadying her with casual strength. Up close, she could see the faint scar along his jawline, the slight shadows under his eyes that suggested he didn't sleep enough, could smell whatever expensive soap he used, clean and sharp. "Careful," he said quietly. Their eyes met. Held. For a moment that stretched too long, that meant something Lena couldn't quite name. Then he released her, stepping back, and the distance between them felt like a wall slamming down. "Don't be late again, Miss Joe." Lena nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and fled. The 7th floor was mercifully easy to find. Margaret Chen turned out to be a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen every possible variety of first-day disaster. When Lena appeared in her doorway, breathless and still slightly damp, Margaret simply sighed and gestured to a chair. "You met him, didn't you?" What?" "Adrian Vale. You have that look, like you just had a close encounter with a particularly elegant shark." Margaret pulled out a fresh employee packet. "Don't worry. Most people survive it." "I walked into his private spa." Lena slumped in the chair. "On accident. While he was in a towel." Margaret's eyes widened. Then to Lena's surprise, she laughed. Actually laughed. A warm sound that filled the small office. "Oh, honey, that's a new one. In 15 years here, I've heard a lot of Adrian Vale horror stories, but nobody's managed that particular feat." She shook her head, still smiling. "The fact that you're still employed is actually impressive." "Am I? Still employed?" If he'd wanted you fired, security would have already escorted you out. Margaret slid the packet across the desk. Adrian Vale is many things. Demanding, difficult, occasionally impossible. But he's not unfair. If you can do the work, he doesn't care how you started. Lena wanted to believe that, needed to believe it really, because this job was the only thing standing between her and another month of ramen noodles and overdue bills. She'd been working 3 part-time jobs before this, tutoring rich kids in Mandarin, translating restaurant menus for $5 each, doing transcription work until her eyes burned. When the recruitment email had come through, she'd almost deleted it as spam. Junior translator position, Vale Industries. Salary that was triple what she currently made. Too good to be true, obviously. Except it wasn't spam. It was real. And somehow, against all odds, she'd gotten the interview. Then the offer. Then she'd spent her last $20 on a blouse that didn't have any visible stains and told herself this was it. This was the break she needed. And she'd walked into her boss's bathroom. "What's he like?" Lena heard herself ask. Really, I mean, everyone says he's brilliant, ruthless, but nobody talks about him. Margaret's smile faded slightly. She was quiet for a moment, considering. "He's a good man carrying a lot of weight," she said finally. "He doesn't let people see it, but it's there. And he's a good father." Father? Lena blinked. She hadn't known that. The articles she'd read, quick Google searches on her phone during breaks, had mentioned Adrian Vale was single, wealthy, self-made. Nothing about a child. His daughter Emma, she's 4. Sweetest little thing you'll ever meet. Margaret's expression softened. He raises her alone, has since she was born. Questions crowded Lena's mind, but before she could ask, Margaret was standing, all business again. "Come on, let me show you your desk. You've got a contract translation due by end of day. Chinese pharmaceutical merger, about 200 pages. Think you can handle it?" Lena stood, squaring her shoulders. 200 pages. 5 hours until end of business. She'd translated longer documents in worse circumstances. "Yes," she said. "I can handle it." The translation department occupied a corner of the 7th floor, a cluster of cubicles that smelled like coffee and stress. Lena's desk was the smallest, wedged between a filing cabinet and a window that looked out over the city. She loved it immediately. The contract was waiting in her inbox, and Lena dove in, grateful for something to focus on besides her mortifying morning. Chinese pharmaceutical terminology was dense, technical, full of specialized vocabulary that didn't translate directly. But Lena had always been good with languages, had a feel for the rhythm and flow of translation that went beyond just word-for-word conversion. Her father had taught her that. Before he died, before everything fell apart. Don't just translate the words, Lena. Translate the meaning, the intention. Languages are doors. You have to know which key opens which lock. She worked through lunch, barely noticing when the office around her gradually emptied for the cafeteria. By 3 o'clock, she was halfway through, her eyes burning but her rhythm steady. By 5, she was running final checks, making sure every technical term was precise, every clause clear. At 5:47, she hit send. Lena slumped back in her chair, her hands cramping. Done. She'd actually done it. 200 pages, translated, verified, submitted. On her first day. After the worst possible start. Impressive. Lena's head snapped up. Adrian Vale stood in the entrance to her cubicle, wearing a different suit now, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored. His hair was dry, styled back from his face. He looked every inch the billionaire CEO, all sharp edges and controlled power. Lena scrambled to her feet, nearly knocking over her coffee mug in the process. "Mr. Vale, I didn't hear you come in." I moved quietly. His eyes flicked to her computer screen, to the completed translation confirmation. "Margaret said you finished the pharmaceutical contract." "Yes, sir. I just submitted it for review." "I read it already." Lena's stomach dropped. "Already?" She'd literally just... "It's good," Adrian said. "Better than good. You caught an error in the original Chinese version, a misplaced modifier that would have changed the entire liability clause. My legal team missed it. 3 senior translators missed it." "Oh." Lena didn't know what to say. I noticed the syntax seemed off, so I cross-referenced with... You cross-referenced with the International Pharmaceutical Nomenclature Standards. Adrian's expression was unreadable. I saw your notes in the margin comments. Was that, should I not have? You should have. That kind of thoroughness is exactly what I need. He paused, and something in his posture shifted. Less corporate, more human. I wanted to apologize for this morning. Lena blinked. You want to apologize? Mr. Vale, I'm the one who crashed your private. The security guard should have given you clearer directions, and I should have been less hostile. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly. I'm not good with unexpected intrusions, but you were clearly lost, clearly panicking. I could have handled it better. This was surreal. Her billionaire boss apologizing to her, the same man who, according to office gossip, had once made a senior executive cry during a presentation. It's okay, Lena said. I mean, I understand. If someone walked into my bathroom, not that I have a bathroom like that, obviously, but if I did, I'd probably be upset too. Was that almost a smile? Just a flicker at the corner of Adrian's mouth, gone before Lena could be sure. Get some rest, Miss Joe. Tomorrow's going to be more intense. We have a board meeting at 9. I need you there to translate for our Taiwanese investors. Tomorrow? But I just started. You'll be fine. Adrian was already turning to leave. Wear something without coffee stains. He was gone before Lena could respond. She stood there, alone in her cubicle, trying to process what had just happened. Her first day. The worst start imaginable. A completed translation that apparently impressed one of the most demanding men in the industry. And an assignment to a board meeting that was definitely several levels above her pay grade. Lena looked out the window. The city sprawled below, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled in. Somewhere out there was her tiny studio apartment, her stack of overdue bills, her life that had felt like it was constantly one disaster away from collapse. Maybe, just maybe, things were about to change. The board meeting was in a room that probably cost more than Lena's entire education. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A table made from a single piece of polished wood that looked like it had been grown specifically for this purpose. Chairs that adjusted with the quiet hum of German engineering. Everything was steel and glass, and the kind of calculated minimalism that screamed wealth. Lena sat in the corner trying to be invisible, her new laptop open in front of her. Margaret had lent her the computer. You can't take notes on that dinosaur you brought in yesterday, along with a navy blazer that almost fit. The Taiwanese investors entered at precisely 9 o'clock. 3 men in expensive suits talking rapidly in Mandarin, followed by their translator, a severe-looking woman in her 50s who gave Lena a dismissive glance. Then Adrian entered and the room's energy shifted. He commanded space without trying, moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to prove himself. His suit today was darker, almost black, and he wore a watch that Lena suspected cost more than her annual salary. But what struck her was his face. In profile, when he thought no one was watching, there was something tired there, something heavy. The meeting started. Lena took notes, following the conversation as it flowed between English and Mandarin. The investors were interested in expanding their pharmaceutical distribution into the U.S. market, wanted Vale Industries to manage the logistics and regulatory approval. Standard business talk, mostly. Then one of the investors said something that made Adrian pause. 我们需要确保这次不会像上次那样，我们不能承受另一次背叛。We need to ensure this won't be like last time. We cannot afford another betrayal. Lena's pen stilled. The other translator rendered it as, we need assurances of stability. Close, but not quite right. The word they'd used, beipan, specifically meant betrayal, a much stronger term than just instability. She glanced up. Adrian's expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had gone very still. 我理解, he responded in flawless Mandarin. I understand. 上次的事件让我们都付出了代价, the lead investor continued. The previous incident cost us all. 什么事件? Lena thought. What incident? But the conversation was moving on, back to contracts and timelines, and Lena forced herself to focus on her notes. Still, that moment stuck with her. The weight in the investor's words, the way Adrian's shoulders had tensed just slightly. The meeting ended at 11. Handshakes, polite smiles, promises to review proposals. Lena gathered her things, preparing to slip out. Miss Joe! Adrian's voice stopped her at the door. Yes, sir? Your translation of Mr. Chen's comment about the previous incident. You wrote betrayal in your notes, not instability. Lena's heart skipped. Had she overstepped? Used language too strong? Yes. The word he used was bei pan. It specifically means, I know what it means. Adrian's expression was unreadable. You're the first translator we've had who's been that precise. Most of them soften difficult words, try to make things sound more diplomatic. Should I have? No. You should always translate exactly what's said. I need to know what people actually mean, not what sounds pleasant. He paused. Good work. It was the second time he'd complimented her work. Lena felt an absurd flutter of pride. Thank you, Mr. Vale. She turned to leave again, but Adrian spoke once more. Do you speak any other languages besides Mandarin and English? Cantonese, Japanese. Some Korean? I'm not fluent, but I can get by. And I read classical Chinese if that's useful. Impressive range. My father was a linguistics professor. The words came out before Lena could stop them. He believed languages were the key to understanding people, their culture, their values, the way they think. Was, Lena swallowed. He died 6 years ago. Adrian was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had lost some of its corporate edge. I'm sorry. Thank you. Lena shifted her laptop bag. He would have loved this job. All these different languages, different cultures. He always said the best translators were bridges, not barriers. Bridges, not barriers, Adrian repeated softly. That's a good philosophy. For a moment, they stood there in the empty boardroom, the morning light streaming through the windows. Lena caught herself studying his face again, noticing the small details. The slight silver at his temples, the way his tie was knotted perfectly, but his cufflinks were mismatched, one silver, one gunmetal gray. A small imperfection in an otherwise flawless appearance. I should go, Lena said. I have a contract review at noon. Adrian nodded. Dismissed. It should have sounded cold, military, but somehow, the way he said it, it almost felt like courtesy. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm Lena hadn't expected. Adrian was demanding, relentlessly, exhaustingly demanding. He wanted translations fast, accurate, nuanced. He'd send her documents at midnight with a note saying, need this by morning. He'd interrupt her lunch to ask for a verbal translation of a conference call. He'd question her word choices, push her to explain her reasoning, challenge her interpretations. Other translators in the department started avoiding his projects. Lena thrived on them. Maybe it was stubborn pride. Maybe it was the memory of all those years scraping by, proving herself over and over. Or maybe it was something else. The way Adrian listened when she explained a translation choice, really listened, like her opinion mattered. He never praised her work in front of others. But sometimes, late at night when she was still at her desk, he'd send an email. Just 2 words. Well done. Lena saved every single one. She learned his patterns. Learned that he took his coffee black, 3 cups before noon. Learned that he got tense when anyone mentioned past business deals from 5 years ago. Learned that every Thursday at 6, he left exactly on time, no matter what crisis was happening, because Thursdays were Emma's parent-teacher conference days. She learned that despite his reputation for being cold, he remembered everyone's names, remembered the security guard's daughter was applying to colleges, asked about her applications, remembered that the janitor's husband was in the hospital, sent flowers. Adrian Vale wasn't a villain. He was just someone who'd built very high walls. One Friday afternoon, 3 weeks into Lena's tenure, she was called to his office. The executive suite was on the top floor, naturally. Lena had only been there twice, both times for quick document drop-offs. Now, entering for an actual meeting, she felt the weight of the space. More windows, more minimalist art, a desk that looked like a piece of sculpture, and photographs. Tucked on a shelf, almost hidden, a little girl with dark hair and Adrian's gray eyes, laughing at something off camera. Emma. Miss Joe. Lena turned. Adrian stood by the window, silhouetted against the afternoon light. You asked to see me, sir? I have a proposition. He turned, and Lena saw he was holding a folder. There's a merger happening, Japanese tech company, very high profile. The negotiations are delicate. Cultural sensitivities, complicated contract language. I need someone who can handle both the linguistic and cultural translation. Okay. Lena's pulse quickened. When do you need it? The first meeting is tomorrow. In Tokyo. Lena blinked. Tomorrow? As in, tomorrow? The company jet leaves at 6 a.m. We'll be there by Sunday morning, local time. Meeting Monday. Back by Wednesday. Adrian's expression was neutral. I understand this is short notice. If you can't, I can. The words came out instantly. Tokyo. An international merger. This was the kind of opportunity that could change everything. Then reality hit. Wait, I don't have a passport. Yes, you do. HR processed it when you were hired. Emergency international assignments clause in your contract. Adrian slid the folder across his desk. Your passport is in there, along with your itinerary, hotel information, and a corporate card for expenses. Lena opened the folder. Her passport photo stared back at her. When had they even taken this? The hotel information showed a 5-star accommodation in Shibuya. The corporate card was sleek black metal with her name embossed in silver. This is a lot. You've proven yourself capable. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. I don't give assignments to people who can't handle them. Can you handle this? Lena met his eyes. Gray and unreadable, as always, but there was something underneath, a test, maybe, or trust. Yes, sir, I can handle this. Good. Pack light. We'll be busy. Hit them. Lena had never been on a private jet before. Had never been on any jet, actually. Her only flights had been a handful of domestic trips on budget airlines crammed into middle seats, with her knees pressed against the seat in front. This was different. The jet was smaller than she'd expected, but somehow more luxurious. Cream leather seats, polished wood accents, a flight attendant who'd offered her champagne before they'd even taken off. Lena had asked for tea instead, too nervous for alcohol. Adrian was already working, laptop open, reading glasses perched on his nose. Lena hadn't known he wore glasses. It made him look softer somehow, more approachable. Almost human. She pulled out her own laptop, the nice one Margaret had let her keep, and started reviewing the merger documents. The Japanese company, Tanaka Technologies, specialized in AI-driven medical diagnostics. Vale Industries wanted to bring their technology to Western markets. On paper, it was straightforward, but Lena had learned that nothing with Adrian Vale was ever straightforward. Question, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Adrian looked up. Yes? The contract mentions a subsidiary clause about previous partnerships, but there's no detail on what those partnerships were or why they ended. Is that going to come up in the meeting? Adrian's expression shifted, not quite closed off, but guarded. Possibly. Should I prepare specific terminology for corporate dissolutions, partnership failures? I want to make sure I can translate quickly if they mention... They won't mention it. Adrian's voice was sharp. Then softer. They won't bring it up. It's in the past. Lena knew she should drop it, should nod, and go back to her prep work. But something in Adrian's tone, in the way his shoulders had tensed, made her push. Mr. Vale, if there's context I should know, historical context that might affect the translation, it would help to understand 5 years ago, I had a partnership with another Japanese firm. Adrian spoke without looking at her, his eyes fixed on his laptop screen. It ended badly, very badly. Tanaka's CEO was friends with the previous CEO. That's the context. What happened? Someone I trusted betrayed that trust. Information was leaked. A deal collapsed. People got hurt. The words were clipped, careful. But underneath, Lena heard something raw. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Don't be. It taught me a valuable lesson. Adrian finally looked at her and his eyes were hard. Trust is a liability in business. The moment you trust someone, you give them the power to destroy you. Lena thought about her father, about the colleague who'd stolen his research, published it under his own name, destroyed her father's career, about how her father had never recovered from that betrayal, how it had broken something fundamental in him. I understand, she said. Adrian studied her for a moment like he was trying to determine if she really did understand or if she was just saying what he wanted to hear. Get some rest, he said finally. We land in 8 hours. You'll need to be sharp. Lena nodded and closed her laptop. The flight attendant dimmed the cabin lights, and the jet settled into the quiet hum of transatlantic travel. She should sleep, should close her eyes and rest. Instead, she watched Adrian work, the glow of his screen illuminating his face in the darkness. Watched the way his brow furrowed when he read something concerning, the way he rubbed his temple when he was thinking. And she wondered what it was like to carry that much weight, to never let anyone close enough to help bear it. Tokyo greeted them with rain, not the gentle romantic kind from movies, the aggressive sideways kind that turned umbrellas inside out and soaked through supposedly waterproof jackets in under 30 seconds. Lena's shoes, her only pair of professional heels, the ones she'd bought at a discount store and had resold twice, were completely ruined by the time they reached the hotel. Adrian, of course, looked immaculate. His driver had met them at the airport with umbrellas the size of small tents, and somehow he'd managed to navigate from car to lobby without a single drop touching his charcoal suit. "Your room is 2847, he said, handing her a key card. "Meetings at 9 tomorrow. Breakfast briefing at 7 in the restaurant. Don't be late." Then he was gone, striding toward the elevators with his assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Catherine who joined them at the airport and hadn't said more than 5 words to Lena the entire flight. Lena stood in the lobby, dripping on marble that probably cost more per square foot than her monthly rent, and tried not to feel completely out of her depth. Her room turned out to be less a room and more a small apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the neon chaos of Shibuya. A bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people. A bed so large and white it looked like a cloud had been captured and stuffed into a mattress. Lena dropped her bag, a battered duffel that had seen better days, on the pristine floor and laughed. Actually laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that echoed in the too big space. 6 weeks ago, she'd been eating instant noodles for dinner 3 nights a week. Now she was standing in a hotel room that probably cost $1,000 a night, preparing for an international merger negotiation. Her phone buzzed, a text from her roommate, Jenna. "How's Tokyo rich girl?" Lena smiled and typed back. "Intimidating. Also wet. Forgot umbrella." "Of course you did. Don't embarrass yourself in front of Mr. Billionaire, too late for that. Long story. Tell you when I get back." She set the phone down and walked to the window. Tokyo sprawled below, all light and motion, and a kind of organized chaos that felt both alien and exciting. Somewhere out there, Adrian was probably still working, probably hadn't even noticed the rain. Lena unpacked her single change of professional clothes, a black pencil skirt and cream blouse that she'd bought specifically for this trip, spending money she really didn't have but couldn't afford not to spend. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up the merger documents again. 7 hours until breakfast. She'd sleep later. The documents were dense, full of technical medical terminology and legal clauses that required her to cross-reference 3 different dictionaries. But as Lena worked through them, she started noticing patterns, specific phrases that kept repeating, references to prior arrangements and historical considerations that seemed deliberately vague. She made notes in the margins, flagging sections that might need clarification, questions she should ask before the meeting started. At some point, exhaustion caught up with her. Lena woke up slumped over her laptop, the sky outside turning that peculiar pre-dawn gray. Her neck ached, her eyes felt like sandpaper, and she had approximately 45 minutes to shower and look like a competent professional. She made it to the restaurant at 7:03. Adrian was already there, sitting at a table by the window, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she approached, and Lena braced herself for a comment about her 3-minute tardiness. Instead, he just gestured to the seat across from him. "Coffee or tea?" "Coffee, please." Lena sat, trying not to notice how tired she looked in the reflection of the window. "Strong coffee." Adrian signaled the waiter, ordered in flawless Japanese. The coffee arrived within seconds, dark and bitter, and exactly what Lena needed. "You look like you didn't sleep," Adrian observed. "I was reviewing the documents. I had some questions about—" "Later. Eat first. You can't translate on an empty stomach." It wasn't a suggestion. Adrian pushed a menu toward her, and Lena found herself ordering more food than she'd normally eat in 2 days. Eggs, rice, grilled fish, miso soup. The kind of breakfast that people ate when they weren't constantly calculating the cost per meal. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Adrian spoke, not looking up from his tablet. "What were your questions?" Lena pulled out her own notes, grateful she'd had the foresight to bring them. The contract keeps mentioning historical partnerships, but never specifies which ones. If Tanaka's CEO brings up your previous work in Japan, I need to know the correct terminology. Was it a joint venture, a subsidiary agreement, a licensing deal? Joint venture. Medical equipment distribution. It lasted 18 months before... Adrian's jaw tightened. Before it ended. And the reason for termination? Breach of contract, intellectual property theft, take your pick. Lena scribbled notes. If they mention the previous CEO, the one you worked with, what's his name? I want to make sure I recognize it if it comes up. Adrian set down his tablet. Takahashi Kenji. But he won't come up. He died 3 years ago. Oh. Lena's pen stilled. I'm sorry, I didn't... Heart attack. He was 62. Adrian's voice was flat, giving nothing away. The betrayal wasn't his fault. He was betrayed too. There was something there, something heavy beneath the words. But before Lena could probe further, Catherine appeared at their table. Car's here. Tanaka's office is 20 minutes away, but traffic's bad. We should leave now. Adrian stood and Lena scrambled to follow, shoving the last bite of rice into her mouth and grabbing her folder. Professional, graceful, absolutely neither of those things. The car ride was tense. Catherine spent the entire time on her phone, speaking rapid Japanese to someone. Adrian stared out the window, his expression unreadable, and Lena reviewed her notes, trying to calm the anxiety building in her chest. This was big. Bigger than anything she'd ever done. If she messed up, if she mistranslated something crucial, missed a nuance, it could cost millions, could destroy this deal, could get her fired. Stop spiraling. Lena's head snapped up. Adrian was looking at her now, those gray eyes seeing too much. I'm not... You're gripping that folder so hard you're going to tear it. And you haven't taken a breath in about 30 seconds. He leaned back in his seat. You're prepared. You know the material. Trust yourself. Easy for you to say. You've done this 100 times. And the first time, I threw up in a bathroom before the meeting. Lena blinked. You did? I was 26, trying to close a deal worth more than my entire company at the time. Spent 15 minutes hunched over a toilet, convinced I was going to ruin everything. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I didn't, and you won't. It was the most personal thing he'd ever shared with her. Lena felt something shift in her chest, some of the anxiety loosening. Thank you, she said quietly. Adrian nodded and turned back to the window. Tanaka Technologies occupied a sleek glass building in Minato. The lobby was all minimalist design and carefully tended bamboo plants. A receptionist greeted them with deep bows, and they were ushered into an elevator that rose smoothly to the 15th floor. The conference room was already full when they arrived. 5 Japanese executives in dark suits. A woman who was clearly their translator, older than Lena, wearing pearls and an expression of professional disinterest. And at the head of the table, a man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Tanaka Hiroshi, the CEO. He stood when Adrian entered, and the 2 men bowed. Not the casual bow of business associates, but something deeper, more formal. Vale-san, o hisashiburi desu. Long time no see. Tanaka-san, o genki desu ka? How have you been? The formalities continued in Japanese, and Lena found herself translating quietly into her recorder, creating a backup record. Adrian's Japanese was excellent, but there were moments where Tanaka used formal, archaic phrases that clearly challenged even his fluency. They settled into their seats. Lena positioned herself slightly behind Adrian and to his right, where she could see both him and the Japanese executives. Catherine sat on his left, already pulling out a laptop. Tanaka's opening remarks were gracious, welcoming. He spoke about his company's innovations, about the potential for partnership, about mutual respect and shared goals. Standard corporate diplomacy. Then he said something that made the temperature in the room drop. Mochiron, watashi tachi wa kako no keiken kara manabanakereba naranai. Of course, we must learn from past experiences. The other translator rendered it as, we must be forward-thinking. Wrong. Lena's hands tightened on her pen. The phrase Tanaka had used, kako no keiken, specifically meant past experiences, past mistakes. He was talking about history, not the future. She leaned forward slightly, caught Adrian's eye. He gave her the smallest nod. Permission. Excuse me, Lena said in Japanese, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Tanaka-san, anata wa kako no keiken to iimashita ka? You said past experiences? Tanaka turned to her, and Lena saw surprise flicker across his face. The other translator looked affronted. Hi. Yes. Dono yona keiken desu ka? What kind of experiences? A long pause. The other executives exchanged glances. Then Tanaka smiled, and it didn't quite reach his eyes. Takahashi-san to no keiken desu? The experiences with Takahashi-san. Lena felt Adrian tense beside her, though his expression didn't change. She translated quickly, keeping her voice neutral. Mr. Tanaka is referencing the previous partnership, the one with Takahashi Kenji. I understood him, Adrian said quietly. Then in Japanese, Takahashi-san wa yoi hito deshita, kare no shi wa higeki deshita. Takahashi-san was a good man. His death was a tragedy. Shikashi kare wa ayamata. But he was mistaken. Tanaka's words were soft, almost gentle, but they carried weight. Takahashi was mistaken. Nani ni tsuite? About what? Dere o shinjiru ka? About whom to trust. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush. Lena translated the exchange, her mouth dry. This wasn't just business anymore. This was personal. Adrian was very still. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but Lena could hear the edge underneath. Watashi mo onaji machigai o shimashita. I made the same mistake. Shiteru. I know. Tanaka leaned forward, and his expression shifted. Less formal business partner, more something else. Empathy, maybe. Or understanding. Vale-san, watashi tachi wa anata o sonkei shitemasu. Anata ga dono you ni saiken shita ka. Shikashi, kono partnership o susumeru mae iai, watashi tachi wa shiru hitsuyou ga imasu. Anata wa mada kako ni torawarete imasu uka. Renazubures kyachido. She translated carefully. Mr. Vale, we respect you, how you rebuilt. But before we proceed with this partnership, we need to know, are you still trapped in the past? Every eye in the room was on Adrian. Lena could see the muscle in his jaw working, could feel the tension radiating from him. For a moment, she thought he might walk out, might end the meeting right there. Instead, he took a breath and answered in English, letting Lena translate his words into Japanese. The past doesn't trap me. It teaches me. What happened with the previous partnership, what was stolen, what was destroyed, it made me better at my job. More careful, more thorough. He paused. But it didn't make me a coward. I'm here because I believe in your technology, because I think we can do something significant together, and I'm willing to take that risk. Lena translated, keeping her voice steady even as she felt the weight of what Adrian was revealing. This wasn't just about business. This was about him choosing to trust again, despite everything that had happened before. Tanaka listened to the translation, then nodded slowly. Yoi. Good. He gestured to one of his executives, who pulled out a new document. The tension in the room eased, conversation shifting back to technical specifications and timelines. But Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something important had just happened. Some test had been passed, some invisible barrier crossed. The meeting lasted 4 hours. By the end, Lena's hand was cramping from notes, her throat dry from constant translation. But they had the outline of an agreement. Not finalized. There would be more meetings, more negotiations, but the foundation was there. As they left the building, Catherine walking ahead to call the car, Adrian turned to Lena. That was well done. The way you caught the mistranslation about past experiences, if you hadn't pushed back, we would have spent the whole meeting talking past each other. I just translated what he actually said. No, you understood the subtext. The other translator was smoothing over the difficult parts, trying to make everything sound pleasant. You gave me the truth. Adrian looked at her directly. That's rare and valuable. Lena felt warmth spread through her chest, pride mixing with something else she couldn't quite name. Thank you. The car arrived, and they climbed in. Catherine immediately started typing on her phone, but Adrian just sat back, eyes closed, looking more exhausted than Lena had ever seen him. Are you okay? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Adrian opened his eyes. Why wouldn't I be? That got pretty intense in there, personal. Business is always personal. People who say otherwise are lying to themselves. He was quiet for a moment. Takahashi was my mentor. When I first tried to expand into Asian markets, he was the one who helped me navigate the cultural differences, the business practices I didn't understand. And when someone close to both of us betrayed that trust, sold our proprietary research to a competitor, it destroyed him. I'm sorry. He died believing I blamed him. We hadn't spoken in 2 years when he had the heart attack. Adrian's voice was flat, carefully controlled. So, yes, that meeting was intense, but it was necessary. Lena wanted to say something comforting, something profound, but she had a feeling Adrian wouldn't want that. So instead, she just nodded and turned to look out the window. They spent the rest of the day in meetings, smaller sessions with Tanaka's technical team, walking through product specifications and market projections. Lena translated until the words started blurring together, until she had to check her notes to remember which meeting was which. By the time they got back to the hotel, it was past midnight Tokyo time. Lena's entire body ached, her voice was hoarse, and she was pretty sure she'd earned about 17 hours of sleep. Tomorrow's lighter, Catherine said as they entered the lobby. Just a working lunch and a facility tour. Meeting at noon. Great, Lena managed. I'll be there. She practically crawled to her room, kicked off her ruined shoes, and face-planted onto the cloud bed without even bothering to change clothes. Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. Excellent work today. Take the morning off. Noon is fine. Lena stared at the message for a long moment. Adrian Vale, telling her to sleep in, giving her a break. Maybe he was human after all. She set her alarm for 10, plugged in her phone, and was asleep before her head hit the pillow. The facility tour turned out to be fascinating. Tanaka Technologies had a research center just outside Tokyo, all glass walls and clean rooms where technicians in white suits worked on AI diagnostic equipment that looked like it belonged in science fiction. Lena found herself genuinely interested, asking questions that went beyond just translation. How did the AI learn to recognize different diseases? What was the error rate? How did they handle patient privacy concerns? One of the lead researchers, a woman about Lena's age named Yuki, seemed delighted to explain, and soon they were deep in a conversation that was part technical discussion, part mutual language practice. Adrian watched from a distance, talking with Tanaka about manufacturing partnerships. But Lena caught him glancing over a few times, and once, just once, she thought she saw him almost smile. The working lunch was in a private room at a restaurant that had 3 Michelin stars. Lena tried not to embarrass herself with the kaiseki meal, following Adrian's lead on which dishes to eat when, which chopsticks to use for what. You're adapting well, Catherine murmured at one point, sounding almost approving. Most translators we bring on international trips spend half their time looking terrified of the food. My father took me to a lot of different restaurants when I was young, Lena said. He believed you couldn't really understand a culture without understanding their food. Smart man. He was. After lunch, Tanaka pulled Adrian aside for a private conversation. Catherine went to make phone calls, and Lena found herself alone in the restaurant's garden, a small zen space with carefully raked gravel and a single maple tree. She pulled out her phone, intending to check messages. Instead, she found herself scrolling through photos from years ago. Her father in his university office, surrounded by books in a dozen languages. Her father at her high school graduation, proud despite his fading health. Her father in the hospital, 3 weeks before he died, still trying to teach her the proper tones for Mandarin vowels. Your father was a professor? Lena jumped. Adrian had appeared beside her, moving silently as always. Yes. Linguistics. He taught at a small university upstate. She quickly closed the photo app. Sorry, I didn't mean to. You don't need to apologize for missing him. Adrian sat down on the bench beside her, which was surprising enough that Lena didn't know how to respond. He never sat with her, never sought out casual conversation. Emma looks like her mother, he said quietly, looking at the maple tree. Everyone says so. But I see myself in her sometimes. The stubbornness, the way she processes things silently before speaking. Where's Emma's mother? The question came out before Lena could stop it. I'm sorry, that's too personal. She died in childbirth. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, but Lena heard the weight beneath it. Complications. The doctor said it was rare, unpredictable. One of those things that just happens. I'm so sorry. We weren't married, weren't even really together, truthfully. It was, he paused, choosing words carefully. It was complicated, but she wanted the baby, wanted to be a mother. And then she was gone, and I had this tiny person who needed me, and I had no idea what I was doing. Lena thought about Emma's photo in his office, the way Adrian always left exactly on time on Thursdays. You're a good father, she said. I'm an adequate father. Emma deserves better. She deserves someone who shows up, who tries. That's more than a lot of kids get. Adrian looked at her then, really looked at her, and Lena felt something pass between them. Recognition, maybe. Two people who'd lost the people they loved, trying to figure out how to keep going. Your father would be proud of you, Adrian said. The work you're doing, the way you fought for this opportunity. Lena's throat tightened. Thank you. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the way sunlight filtered through the maple leaves. Then Catherine appeared in the doorway, gesturing urgently. We need to go. The car's here for the airport. The flight back to New York felt different than the flight out. Less tense. Adrian actually slept for a few hours, and when he woke up, he and Lena went over the meeting notes together, refining details for the final contract draft. You caught something in the third session, Adrian said, scrolling through his tablet. About the distribution timeline. The original Japanese said within 6 months, but the translator rendered it as approximately 6 months. That's a significant legal difference. It's the difference between a deadline and a suggestion, Lena agreed. I thought it was important. It could have cost us millions in penalty clauses if we'd missed it. Adrian made a note on his tablet. I'm putting you on the full negotiation team, not just as a translator, as a strategic consultant. Lena's heart skipped. Mr. Vale, I've only been here 2 months, and you've already proven yourself more valuable than people who've been here 5 years. Accept the compliment, Miss Joe. She smiled despite herself. Okay, thank you. You'll get a salary adjustment too. Catherine will handle the paperwork. That's really not... It's deserved. And if you argue with me about it, I'll make you translate the entire pharmaceutical merger contract again. Lena laughed, actually laughed, and saw something flicker in Adrian's expression. Surprise, maybe, at the sound. They landed in New York at 8 in the evening, local time. Lena's body had no idea what time zone it was in anymore, but her brain was buzzing with exhaustion and adrenaline in equal measure. Car service will take you home, Adrian said as they collected their bags. Charge it to the corporate account. I can just take the subway. Lena. He said her first name, and it startled them both. Take the car, you've earned it. She was too tired to argue. Too tired to do anything except nod and follow Catherine to where the drivers waited. Her apartment building looked shabbier than ever after Tokyo's gleaming towers. Lena climbed the 4 flights. The elevator had been broken for 3 weeks, and let herself into the tiny studio she shared with Jenna. Jenna was on the couch, eating cereal and watching some reality show. She looked up when Lena entered, and her eyes widened. Holy shit, you look dead. Feel dead. Lena dropped her bag and collapsed onto the other end of the couch. Also feel like I just experienced something completely surreal. Tell me everything, and I mean everything. Did you embarrass yourself? Did he fire anyone? Did you see him in a towel again? No, and thankfully no. Lena grabbed a handful of Jenna's cereal. But Jenna, I think he might actually respect me. Of course he respects you. You're brilliant. No, I mean really respect me, like as an equal. He promoted me, made me a strategic consultant. Jenna screamed and threw a pillow at her. Are you kidding? Lena, that's incredible. See, I told you that you were too good for those shitty translation jobs. It's not finalized yet, but... Lena smiled, feeling the exhaustion settle over her like a blanket. But yeah, it's pretty incredible. She went to bed that night with her body aching and her mind racing, replaying moments from the trip. The way Adrian had looked at her in the garden, the way he'd said her name in the airport, the way something between them had shifted from boss and employee to something more complicated, something that felt like the beginning of understanding. The promotion came with a new office. Not a corner office, Lena wasn't delusional, but an actual office with walls and a door that closed. After 2 months in a cubicle wedged between a filing cabinet and a window that wouldn't open, it felt like a palace. She spent her first morning arranging her meager possessions on the desk, trying to make the space look lived in rather than desperately sparse. Margaret stopped by around 10 with a coffee and a knowing smile. Strategic consultant. That's a big jump for someone who's been here less than 3 months. I'm still processing it, Lena admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Half of me thinks it's real. The other half keeps waiting for someone to tell me there's been a mistake. No mistake. Adrian doesn't make impulsive decisions about personnel. If he promoted you, it's because you earned it. Margaret leaned against the door frame. Fair warning, though, the higher you climb here, the more people notice. Not everyone's going to be happy about your rapid rise. I can handle office politics. I'm sure you can. Just watch your back. And if anyone gives you trouble, come find me. After Margaret left, Lena tried to focus on work, but her attention kept drifting to the envelope Catherine had delivered that morning. Her new employment contract, including the salary adjustment Adrian had mentioned. When she'd finally opened it on the subway ride in, she'd nearly dropped her phone. The number was more than double her previous salary, more than triple what she'd been making before Vail Industries. It was the kind of money that meant she could pay off her student loans, could move out of Jenna's studio, could stop calculating whether she could afford both dinner and breakfast, could breathe. The intercom on her desk phone buzzed, making her jump. Miss Joe, Mr. Vail would like to see you in his office. Lena's stomach did a small flip. Even after Tokyo, even after the promotion, being summoned to Adrian's office still felt like being called to the principal's office. She grabbed her tablet and took the elevator to the top floor. Adrian's assistant, a different one than Catherine, a young man named David, who looked perpetually stressed, waved her through without comment. The office door was open, and Lena could see Adrian standing by the windows, phone pressed to his ear. Don't care what the board thinks, the timeline stays as is. We're not rushing this just to make the quarterly report look better. He paused, listening. Then they can complain at the next meeting. I'll be there to explain exactly why they're wrong. He hung up and turned, spotting Lena in the doorway. Come in. Close the door. Lena obeyed, her heart rate picking up slightly. Adrian looked tired today, she noticed. More tired than usual. His tie was slightly loosened, and there was a coffee stain on his cuff that he probably didn't know was there. We have a situation, he said without preamble. The Tanaka deal is moving forward faster than expected. They want to finalize the partnership agreement by the end of the month. That's 3 weeks away. Exactly. Which means we need to accelerate everything. Legal review, financial projections, integration planning, and they're hosting a gala in 2 weeks to announce the partnership. Black tie, major media presence, every important player in tech and pharmaceutical industries. Lena felt her palms start to sweat. And you need me to... I need you there, as part of the negotiation team and as my primary translator for the evening. There will be multiple languages in play. Japanese, obviously, but also Mandarin, Korean. Some of Tanaka's other investors are flying in. Okay, I can do that. There's one complication. Adrian's expression was carefully neutral. My daughter will be there. Lena blinked. Emma? I don't typically bring her to corporate events, but this one conflicts with my custody schedule, and her mother's parents... He stopped, corrected himself. Her grandparents are out of the country. My regular babysitter has the flu. So Emma comes with me, or I don't go at all. And you need to go. Yes. Adrian looked uncomfortable, which was unusual enough that Lena paid attention. I'm telling you this because Emma can be... She's 4. She gets overwhelmed in crowds, doesn't like loud noises. If she has a meltdown in the middle of this gala, it's going to be a problem. You want me to help keep an eye on her? I know it's not in your job description. I don't mind. The words came out quickly, honestly. Really, I'm good with kids. Adrian studied her for a moment, like he was trying to determine if she meant it or was just being polite. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him. Thank you. I'll have Catherine send you the event details and Emma's schedule. She usually needs a quiet space to decompress every hour or so. Got it? As Lena turned to leave, Adrian spoke again. Lena. He used her first name again, and again it felt significant. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. I know, she said, and meant it. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Contract revisions came through at all hours. Lena found herself working until midnight most nights, translating technical specifications and legal clauses, cross-referencing terminology across 3 languages. The rest of the negotiation team, a mix of lawyers, financial analysts, and senior executives, treated her warily at first, clearly skeptical of someone so new having such a prominent role. She won them over by catching a mistranslation in the intellectual property clause that would have given Tanaka far more control over derivative technologies than Vail Industries intended. After that, people started actually listening when she spoke up in meetings. The gala dress was another challenge entirely. Lena had exactly 0 black tie appropriate outfits. She'd borrowed a dress from Jenna once for a college formal, but that had been 6 years ago and no longer fit, which meant shopping, which meant spending money she was still getting used to having. She ended up in a department store staring at price tags that made her dizzy. A saleswoman approached, took one look at Lena's obvious discomfort, and gently steered her toward the sales section. "Corporate event?" the woman asked.
"Yeah, really important one." "Then you want something classic, not too trendy. You don't want to look like you're trying too hard, but not boring either." They found a dress in deep navy blue, simple but elegant, with a neckline that was professional but not prudish. When Lena tried it on, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. "You look beautiful, honey," the saleswoman said. "Whoever you're trying to impress is going to be impressed."
"I'm not trying to impress anyone," Lena said automatically. The saleswoman just smiled knowingly and rang up the purchase. The night of the gala, Lena spent an hour on hair and makeup, trying to achieve the kind of effortless elegance that actually required enormous effort. Jenna helped, wielding an eyeliner pencil like a weapon and offering running commentary. "You're nervous." "I'm not nervous. You're doing that thing where you reorganize everything when you're anxious. You've moved that lipstick 3 times. Lena forced herself to stop fidgeting. It's a big deal. Important people. And I'm supposed to help with Emma, and what if she doesn't like me? Kids can tell when adults are faking it." "You're not faking anything. You're a good person who genuinely wants to help. She'll see that." "I hope so." The car Adrian had arranged picked Lena up at 6. She felt ridiculous climbing into the back of a town car in her department store dress, but the driver treated her with the same courtesy he probably gave actual VIPs. The gala was at a museum, naturally, because, of course, billionaires rented out entire museums for their corporate events. Lena walked up the marble steps, her new heels, also on sale, also slightly uncomfortable, clicking against stone. Inside, the main hall had been transformed into something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers, waiters in white jackets carrying trays of champagne, men in tuxedos and women in gowns that probably cost more than Lena's car. If she'd had a car. She spotted Adrian immediately. He stood near the center of the room, talking to a group of executives, and Lena's breath caught slightly. She'd seen him in suits every day for months, but a tuxedo was different, made him look less like a CEO and more like something out of an old Hollywood film. Then she saw Emma. The little girl stood close to Adrian's leg, one small hand gripping his pant leg, her other thumb in her mouth. She wore a dark green velvet dress and looked absolutely miserable. Lena made her way over, weaving through the crowd. Adrian spotted her, and something in his expression eased. "Lena, thank you for coming." "Of course." She crouched down slightly, putting herself at Emma's eye level. "Hi, Emma. I'm Lena. Your dad told me you might need a friend tonight." Emma stared at her with Adrian's gray eyes, suspicious and evaluating. "I don't like it here," she said around her thumb. "It's too loud." "Yeah, I don't like it much either. Too many people." "Daddy says I have to be good." "I think you're already being good. Being good doesn't mean you have to be happy about it." That got a tiny smile. Emma removed her thumb from her mouth. "You talk funny." "Emma," Adrian said, mild warning in his voice. "No, she's right. I do talk a little funny. My dad was from California, my mom was from Taiwan, and I grew up in New York, so I'm a mixed-up kind of person." "I'm mixed up too," Emma said seriously. "Daddy says I'm perfect exactly how I am, but sometimes I don't feel perfect." Lena's heart squeezed. "Nobody feels perfect all the time. That's okay." "Are you Daddy's friend?" "I work with your daddy." "That's not what I asked." Lena glanced up at Adrian, who was suddenly very interested in his drink. "I guess I am his friend. Kind of." "Good. He needs more friends. He's always working." Before Adrian could respond to that particular bit of truth, Tanaka Hiroshi appeared with his wife, an elegant woman in a silver gown. Adrian straightened, slipping back into corporate mode, and Lena rose to her feet. The conversations that followed were a blur of Japanese and English, business talk, and polite society chit-chat. Lena translated smoothly, barely thinking about it, while keeping half her attention on Emma, who had retreated back to her position clinging to Adrian's leg. After about 30 minutes, Emma tugged on Lena's dress. "I need to be quiet now," she whispered. Lena understood immediately. She touched Adrian's elbow lightly, interrupting his conversation with a Korean investor. "Excuse me, Mr. Vale, Emma needs a break." Adrian's eyes flickered to his daughter, saw her distress, and nodded. "There's a room set aside, down that hallway, second door on the left. David has the key." Lena found David, got the key, and led Emma to what turned out to be a small office that had been converted into a quiet space. Someone, probably Adrian, had thought to bring Emma's backpack, which contained a tablet, headphones, and her favorite stuffed animal, a rabbit with one ear shorter than the other. "Thank you," Emma said, already pulling on the headphones. "The noise makes my brain feel fuzzy." "I get that. My brain feels fuzzy too sometimes." Lena sat on the floor beside Emma, pulling out her phone to review some notes for later meetings. They stayed like that for nearly 20 minutes, Emma watching something on her tablet, Lena working quietly beside her. "Lena? Yeah? Do you think my daddy's sad?" The question caught Lena off guard. She set down her phone, considering how to answer. "Why do you think he's sad?" "He smiles at me, but sometimes his eyes don't smile. Mommy used to say that's how you know someone's really sad, when their eyes don't match their mouth." Lena's throat tightened. "Your mommy sounds like she was very smart." "I don't remember her much, just little pieces. She smelled like flowers, and she sang to me." Emma hugged her rabbit closer. "Daddy doesn't talk about her. I think it makes him too sad." Sometimes grown-ups have a hard time talking about people they miss.
Do you miss someone? Yeah, my dad. He died when I was a little older than you. Does it stop hurting? Lena thought about lying, about giving the kind of comforting platitude adults usually offered children, but Emma's eyes were too serious, too knowing. "No," she said honestly, "but it hurts different, less sharp, more like a bruise than a cut." Emma nodded like this made perfect sense. Then she put her tablet down and climbed into Lena's lap, a gesture of trust that made Lena's eyes sting. "I think Daddy needs someone to make his eyes smile again," Emma said. "Will you help?" Emma, that's not really something I can." "Please?" Before Lena could figure out how to respond, the door opened. Adrian stood in the doorway, and something in his expression went soft when he saw Emma curled up in Lena's lap. "Everything okay?" "We're good," Lena said. "Just needed some quiet." "The Korean delegation wants to meet. I need you for translation." "I'll be right there." Lena carefully shifted Emma. "You okay if I go for a bit?" Emma nodded. "Can I stay here?" "David's outside. He'll sit with you," Adrian said. Then to Lena, "Thank you." "She's a good kid." "She is. She also doesn't warm up to people easily. You must have made quite an impression." They walked back to the main hall together, falling into step naturally. The gala was in full swing now, music playing, people dancing, champagne flowing freely. Lena spent the next hour translating for various investors and executives, her brain switching between languages so rapidly she barely had time to think. Adrian stayed close, occasionally touching her elbow to guide her toward the next conversation, his presence a steady anchor in the chaos. Around 9, they finally had a break. Adrian grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing waiter, handed one to Lena. "I don't usually drink at these things," she said. "Neither do I, but tonight's been exhausting, and we both earned it." Lena took a sip. The champagne was dry, expensive, nothing like the cheap sparkling wine she and Jenna bought for New Year's. "Emma asked me if I thought you were sad," she said, before she could stop herself. Adrian's expression shuddered. "What did you tell her?" "That sometimes it's hard for grown-ups to talk about people they miss." Diplomatic answer. "She's 4. She doesn't need complicated truths." "No, she needs her father to be less of a mess." Adrian took a long drink of his champagne. "I'm not good at this. The emotional part. I can run a billion-dollar company, negotiate impossible deals, but I can't figure out how to talk to my daughter about her mother. Maybe you don't need to have it all figured out. Maybe you just need to be honest." "Honest about what? That her mother and I barely knew each other? That we weren't in love, weren't even really friends, Just two people who made a mistake that turned into the best thing that ever happened to me? Adrian's voice was low, intense. How do I tell Emma that her mother wanted to be a parent more than anything and died before she got the chance, and I'm a poor substitute who's doing his best not to screw up the one good thing in his life?
Lena had never heard him like this. Raw, unguarded. The champagne had loosened something, or maybe it was just exhaustion, or maybe it was the weight of pretending all night. "You're not a poor substitute," she said quietly. "You're her father. You show up. You make space for her needs. You love her. That's not nothing." "It doesn't feel like enough. It never does." My dad felt the same way. After my mom left, I was 7, he was convinced he was failing me. Too much work, not enough time, didn't know how to do my hair or help with girl stuff. But he tried. Every day he tried. And that mattered more than being perfect. Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and Lena felt exposed under that gaze. "Your father would be very proud of who you've become," he said.
So would Emma's mother. I think she'd look at you and see someone who's doing everything he can to raise a good kid, and succeeding. Something passed between them in that moment. Something that felt like understanding, like the space between strangers closing into something more complicated. Then someone called Adrian's name, breaking the spell. He turned, corporate mask sliding back into place, and Lena took a step back, creating distance. The rest of the evening blurred together. More conversations, more translations, more performing the role of competent professional. Emma rejoined them around 10, looking sleepy, and Lena helped keep her entertained while Adrian finished his obligatory schmoozing. At 11, the crowd finally began to thin. Tanaka gave a short speech announcing the partnership, and there was applause and photos and all the pageantry of corporate success. Lena stood at the edge of it all, watching Adrian smile for cameras with Emma on his hip, and felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a job anymore. Hadn't been for a while, if she was honest with herself. "Ready to leave?" Adrian had appeared beside her, Emma half asleep against his shoulder. "Yeah, I'm exhausted." "Car's outside. We'll drop you off first." Lena wanted to argue, to say she could take the subway, but the truth was her feet were killing her and she was too tired to navigate public transportation in a formal dress. The car ride was quiet. Emma fell completely asleep within 5 minutes, and Adrian adjusted his hold on her carefully, tenderly. Lena watched them in the dim light, this powerful man and his small daughter, and felt her heart do something complicated. They dropped Lena off first. Adrian walked her to her building door, a 4th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that was charitable called Transitional, and Lena saw him take in the peeling paint, the broken intercom, the general shabbiness. "You don't have to live here anymore," he said quietly. "Your salary can afford better." "I know. But Jen is my best friend, and she can't afford better, so I'm staying until she can." Adrian smiled, just slightly. "Of course you are. Thank you for tonight, for trusting me with Emma. She likes you. That's rare." He paused. "I like you too. Also rare." Lena's breath caught. "Mr. Vale, Adrian. When it's just us, you can call me Adrian." "Adrian," Lena repeated, testing the name. It felt intimate, dangerous. "I should go." "Yes." "Good night, Lena." She watched him walk back to the car, watched him settle Emma more comfortably in her car seat, watched the car pull away into the night. Then she climbed the 4 flights to her apartment and sat on her bed, still wearing her dress, trying to process what had just happened. Jenna found her there an hour later. "How was it?" "Complicated," Lena said. "Good, complicated, or bad complicated?" "I don't know yet." But she was starting to think it might be both. The weekend passed in a blur of laundry and meal prep and catching up on sleep. Monday morning, Lena arrived at the office to find a gift box on her desk. Inside was a beautiful pen, expensive and elegant, with a note in Adrian's precise handwriting. "Thank you for Friday. Emma hasn't stopped talking about you." Alina held the pen, feeling its weight, and tried not to read too much into it. Failed completely. The week was intense. Final contract negotiations, endless emails, conference calls that stretched past midnight. The Tanaka deal was enormous, complicated, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Every word mattered. Every clause had to be perfect. Lena threw herself into it, grateful for the distraction.
Friday afternoon, she was deep in a translation of revised technical specifications when her desk phone rang. Lena, Joe. It's Margaret. Can you come to the conference room? We have a situation. The tone in Margaret's voice made Lena's stomach drop. She grabbed her tablet and hurried to the conference room. Inside, she found Margaret, Catherine, and 3 people from the legal team, all looking at a projected document with expressions ranging from concern to outright panic. What's wrong? We found something, Margaret said. In the latest contract revision from Tanaka. Show her, Tom. One of the lawyers pulled up a section of dense legal language, mostly in English with technical terms in Japanese. This clause here, Tom said, pointing, it's about intellectual property rights for derivative research. Seems standard at first glance, but look at this phrasing, applicable to all associated entities and subsidiary partnerships. Okay, Lena said slowly. What's the problem? Cross-reference it with Section 12, subsection 4, the definition of associated entities. Lena scanned the reference section, her blood running cold as she processed the implications. The definition was deliberately vague, open-ended in a way that could potentially give Tanaka access to not just the immediate partnership research, but any research Vail Industries conducted in related fields, including existing projects that had nothing to do with Tanaka. This can't be accidental, she said. It's not, Catherine said grimly. Someone buried this language deliberately. We've been through 6 revisions of this contract, and this phrasing only appeared in the latest version. Where's Adrian? Emergency board meeting. The chairman called it this morning. Apparently some of the board members are concerned about the speed of the Tanaka deal. Margaret's expression was worried. He doesn't know about this yet. Lena looked at the clause again, her translator brain parsing every word, every nuance. Then she saw something else, something that made her pulse quicken. Pull up the Japanese version of this section. Tom switched documents. Lena read through it carefully, comparing the English and Japanese versions side by side. They don't match, she said quietly. What? The English version has this vague, expansive definition. The Japanese version is much more specific. It clearly limits the scope to just the immediate partnership. Someone changed the English translation. The room went silent. Who handled this revision? Lena asked. External counsel, Catherine said. Tanaka's recommended legal firm. We've been coordinating with them to speed up the process. Lena felt something click into place. A pattern forming, just out of reach. I need to see all the contract revisions, every version going back to the beginning. That's hundreds of pages. I know. Get them for me anyway. 2 hours later, Lena sat surrounded by printouts, her eyes burning from reading legal language in 3 different languages. But she'd found it. The pattern. Small changes. Subtle mistranslations. Nothing obvious enough to catch on a casual read, but together, they added up to something damaging. Something that would have given Tanaka significantly more control than Vail Industries intended to grant. And it was all buried in language that only someone fluent in legal terminology across multiple languages would catch. Margaret had been right. This was deliberate. Lena was still making notes when Adrian returned from his board meeting. He looked exhausted and frustrated, his tie loosened and his jaw tight. Lena, Catherine said you found something. She showed him, walked him through each discrepancy, each mistranslation, each clause that didn't quite match across languages. Adrian's expression grew darker with every example. This is the same thing that happened before, he said quietly. 5 years ago. Someone embedded hidden clauses in a contract, and by the time we caught it, the damage was done. You think Tanaka's behind it? No, Hiroshi wouldn't do this. He's too direct. Adrian paced to the window, staring out at the city. But someone in his organization might. Or someone connected to the previous partnership. Someone who wants this deal to fail. Or someone who wants Vail Industries to fail, Lena said. Adrian turned to look at her. What are you thinking? These changes only appeared in the last 2 revisions, after the gala, after the partnership was publicly announced. Lena pulled up her notes. What if someone's trying to sabotage this deal specifically, not to help Tanaka, but to hurt you? That's paranoid. Is it? You said yourself 5 years ago someone betrayed you, destroyed a partnership. What if they're trying to do it again? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. I need to call Hiroshi. Now. The call was in Japanese, rapid and intense. Lena caught enough to understand that Adrian was explaining the contract discrepancies, that Hiroshi was shocked, that both men were coming to the same conclusion. Someone was sabotaging the deal. The question was who, and the answer, when it came 3 days later, was worse than anyone expected. The name came back on a Tuesday. Lena was in Adrian's office with Catherine and the head of legal, a sharp-eyed man named Richard who'd been with Vale Industries since the beginning. They'd been tracing the contract revisions backward, following the digital trail of edits and approvals, when Richard's laptop pinged with an email from their forensic IT team. "Got it," Richard said, his face grim. The changes came from an IP address registered to the law firm Tanaka recommended, but here's the thing, that specific computer was only used by one person. He turned the laptop around. Lena read the name on the screen and felt her stomach drop. James Chen, senior partner at Morrison & Chen International. Former general counsel at Hashimoto Industries. The company that had been Adrian's partner 5 years ago. The partnership that had ended in betrayal and Takahashi's death. Adrian had gone very still, the kind of still that meant he was either about to explode or shut down completely. "Chen," he said quietly. James Chen was Takahashi's lawyer, his friend. He stood next to me at the funeral and told me how sorry he was. "And now he's sabotaging your new partnership," Catherine said. "The question is why?" "Because I destroyed his career." Adrian's voice was flat. "After the IP theft, after everything fell apart, I traced it back. Found out Chen had been leaking information to competitors. Not directly, he was too smart for that, but he'd been feeding them intel through a third party, positioning himself to benefit regardless of which side won." "You exposed him," Lena said. "I had proof. Emails, money transfers. I could have gone to the authorities, had him disbarred and prosecuted. Instead, I gave him a choice. Resign quietly, and I'd keep the evidence private, or fight me, and I'd make sure everyone knew exactly what he'd done." Adrian's jaw tightened. He resigned, moved to a smaller firm, rebuilt his reputation over 5 years. "And now he wants revenge," Richard said. "More than revenge. He wants to ruin me the same way I ruined him." Adrian stood and walked to the window, his back to them. "If this deal fails publicly, if it comes out that Vale Industries entered into another compromise partnership, the board will lose confidence. Investors will pull out. Everything I've built since Hashimoto will collapse." Lena thought about the board meeting Adrian had attended Friday. The chairman's concerns about moving too fast. The whispers she'd heard in the office about some board members questioning Adrian's judgment. Chen wasn't just trying to sabotage one deal. He was trying to destroy Adrian's credibility entirely. "We need to tell Tanaka," Catherine said. "Explain what's happening. Chen recommended the law firm. Tanaka needs to know they can't be trusted." "No." Adrian turned back to face them. "If we tell Tanaka now, it raises questions about why we didn't catch this sooner. Makes us look incompetent. And it gives Chen time to cover his tracks, destroy evidence." "So what do we do?" Richard asked. Adrian looked at Lena. "You found the discrepancies. How many are there total?" 17 major ones across the entire contract. Maybe 24 minor mistranslations that could be explained as errors, but together create legal ambiguity. Can you document all of them? Every single discrepancy, with side-by-side translations showing the original intent versus the altered language? Yes. It'll take time, but yes. How much time? Lena did mental calculations. If I work straight through, maybe 48 hours? Do it. Catherine, get me everything we have on Chen. Current cases, client lists, financial records if you can find them. Richard, I need a legal opinion on whether we can prove intentional sabotage versus incompetent translation. And nobody talks about this outside this room. If Chen finds out we know, he'll disappear. They scattered to their tasks. Lena grabbed her laptop and every version of the contract, retreating to her office to begin the painstaking work of documentation. 2 hours in, her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. "Come to my office. Bring your preliminary findings." Lena saved her work and headed upstairs. Adrian's office door was closed, which was unusual. She knocked, heard his muffled "come in," and entered to find him standing with another man she didn't recognize. Tall, gray-haired, wearing an expensive suit and an expression of barely controlled fury. "Lena, this is Robert Hashimoto, Takahashi's son." Lena's eyes widened. Robert Hashimoto looked nothing like his father. Where Takahashi had been gentle and scholarly in the photos she'd seen, Robert radiated intensity and barely leashed anger. "Miss Joe." Robert's English was perfect, accent-free. "Adrian tells me you're the one who discovered the sabotage." "I found the discrepancies, yes." "Show me." Lena pulled up her documentation on Adrian's large monitor, walking Robert through each mistranslation, each buried clause. He listened in silence, his expression growing darker. "This is exactly what Chen did to my father," Robert said when she finished. "The same tactics, small changes, building to something catastrophic. By the time my father realized what was happening, it was too late." "I didn't know you were involved in the investigation back then," Adrian said carefully. "I wasn't. I was in London, running our European operations. By the time I flew home, my father was already—" Robert's voice cracked slightly. "He had the heart attack the day before I landed. I never got to tell him it wasn't his fault." The pain in his voice was raw, fresh despite 3 years of distance. Lena felt her throat tighten. "Chen killed my father," Robert continued. "Maybe not directly, but the stress, the betrayal, it destroyed him. And now he's trying to do the same thing to you, Adrian, which is why we need to stop him," Adrian said. "But carefully. Legally, I won't give him ammunition to claim we're harassing him or fabricating evidence." "Legally," Robert repeated, his tone suggesting that wasn't his first choice. Then he looked at Lena. "You speak Korean, correct?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because Chen's current firm has a Seoul office, and I have it on good authority that he's been communicating with someone there, encrypted emails, burner phones. Whatever he's planning, it's bigger than just this deal." "How do you know this?" Adrian asked. Robert smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "I've been tracking Chen for 3 years, waiting for him to make a mistake. This is it." Over the next 2 days, Lena barely slept. She worked through the night, documenting every discrepancy, cross-referencing legal precedents, building an airtight case. Adrian brought her coffee at 2 in the morning, didn't comment on the fact that she was still in the same clothes from the previous day, just set the cup down and squeezed her shoulder briefly before leaving. That small gesture, the warmth of his hand through her blouse, kept her going through the next 4 hours. By Thursday morning, she had everything. A 100-page document with side-by-side translations, legal analysis, and a clear timeline showing when each change had been introduced. It was irrefutable. "This is excellent work," Richard said when she presented it to the legal team. "Chen won't be able to talk his way out of this." "The question is how we use it," Catherine said. "Do we go to Tanaka now?" "Not yet," Adrian said. He'd been quiet all morning, thinking. "We need more. Right now we can prove Chen sabotaged the contract, but we can't prove why or whether he's working alone." "Robert said he's been communicating with someone in Seoul," Lena offered. "Then we need to find out who and what they're planning." Adrian looked at Lena. "How's your Korean?" "Conversational? I can read it better than I speak it." "Good enough." Robert's contact in Seoul found some of Chen's encrypted emails. "They're heavily coded, but the base language is Korean. Think you can translate them?" Lena felt a flutter of nervousness. "I can try, but if they're coded, translation might not be enough. We'd need to understand the context, the references." "Which is where I come in," Robert said, entering the conference room with a laptop. "I know how Chen thinks, how he operated 5 years ago. If we can decrypt enough to understand the pattern, I can fill in the gaps." They worked through lunch and into the afternoon. The emails were frustratingly opaque, references to the Veil matter and timeline acceleration and final arrangements. But slowly, piece by piece, a picture emerged. Chen wasn't just sabotaging the Tanaka deal, he was coordinating with someone, multiple someones, to create a cascade of failures. If the Tanaka deal collapsed publicly, Chen's contacts were positioned to swoop in, offer alternative partnerships to Tanaka at better terms, and position themselves as the reliable choice Veil Industries wasn't. "It's a hostile takeover," Robert said, staring at the screen, "not of your company directly, but of your position in the Asian pharmaceutical market. Chen's building a coalition of your competitors, using the Tanaka collapse as proof that Veil Industries can't be trusted." Which explains why he waited until after the gala, Catherine said. Maximum public visibility, maximum embarrassment. And the board meeting, Adrian added quietly. Someone's been feeding the chairman concerns, probably Chen through intermediaries, setting the stage for a vote of no confidence. Lena looked at Adrian and saw something she'd never seen before, genuine fear. Not for himself, she realized, but for everything he'd built. All the people who depended on Vale Industries for their jobs, their livelihoods. We stop him, she said firmly. We have the proof. We know his plan. We stop him before he can execute it. Adrian met her eyes, and something passed between them. Trust. Partnership. More than just boss and employee. How? He asked. Lena thought about her father, about the colleague who'd stolen his research and destroyed his career, about how her father had never fought back, had never defended himself, had just accepted the injustice and let it break him. She'd promised herself she'd never let that happen to someone she cared about. We beat him at his own game, she said. We use his plan against him. The strategy came together over the next 72 hours. Robert had contacts throughout the Asian business community, people who'd been hurt by Chen's manipulations, who wanted to see him exposed. Catherine coordinated with Tanaka's team directly, carefully laying groundwork without revealing the full scope of what they'd discovered. And Lena translated. Document after document, email after email, building a comprehensive picture of Chen's conspiracy. The final piece fell into place on Sunday night. Robert's contact in Seoul, a former prosecutor named Park, found financial records showing Chen had been receiving payments from 3 different Vale Industries competitors. The amounts were small enough to avoid immediate suspicion, but together they added up to nearly $500,000. It's enough, Richard said when they reviewed the evidence. We have motive, means, and documented proof of sabotage. We can go to the authorities. No, Adrian said. We go to Tanaka first. Give him the courtesy of seeing this before it becomes public. And we do it in person. When? Catherine asked. Tomorrow. We fly to Tokyo tonight. Lena looked up from her laptop. Tonight? Adrian, we're not prepared. Yes, we are. You've done the work. We have everything we need. He looked at her directly. I need you there. Tanaka needs to hear this from someone he trusts. And after the last trip, he trusts you. The flight to Tokyo was tense. Adrian spent most of it on the phone with his lawyers, finalizing strategy. Robert sat in grim silence, reviewing documents. And Lena tried to manage the anxiety building in her chest. This was enormous. If they were wrong, if any part of their evidence was flawed, it could destroy not just the Tanaka partnership, but Adrian's entire reputation. But if they were right, if they could prove Chen's sabotage and stop the conspiracy, it would change everything. They landed Tuesday morning, Tokyo time. No hotel this trip. They went straight to Tanaka's headquarters, where Hiroshi was waiting with his own legal team and security personnel. Adrian-san, Tanaka said, his expression grave. Your message said this was urgent. It is. Thank you for seeing us on such short notice. Adrian gestured to Robert. You remember Takahashi-san's son? Tanaka's eyes widened. Robert, I didn't know you were involved. My father's death is very much involved, Robert said, and the man responsible is trying to destroy another partnership. They presented everything in Tanaka's private conference room. Lena translated, keeping her voice steady as they walked through each piece of evidence. The contract discrepancies, the encrypted emails, the financial payments, the larger conspiracy to undermine Vale Industries' position in the Asian market. Tanaka listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each revelation. When they finished, he sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. James Chen recommended the law firm we used for this contract, he said quietly. He told me they were the best, that they'd protected my interests. He was protecting his own interests, Robert said, the same way he protected his interests when he betrayed my father. You have proof of all this? Every word. Adrian slid a tablet across the table. Financial records, email transcripts, contract analysis, everything you need to verify independently. Tanaka spent 20 minutes reviewing the documents, occasionally speaking rapid Japanese to his lawyers. Finally, he looked up. This would have destroyed us, he said. Both our companies. If we'd signed this contract as written, the legal battles alone would have cost millions. The damage to both our reputations, he shook his head. Chen was very thorough. He had 5 years to plan, Adrian said. And you stopped him. Tanaka stood and bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect. Adrian-san, you have my gratitude, and my apology for not being more careful about who I trusted. The trust was betrayed on both sides, Adrian said. The question now is what we do about it. We prosecute, Tanaka said firmly. I will provide whatever evidence you need. My lawyers will cooperate fully with yours. Chen will answer for this. And the partnership? Catherine asked quietly. Tanaka smiled. The partnership proceeds, with new lawyers, new contracts, and much more careful review. But it proceeds. He looked at Lena. Miss Zhou, your work on this has been exceptional. Without your attention to detail, we would never have caught this in time. Lena felt her face warm. I was just doing my job. You were doing much more than that. Tanaka turned back to Adrian. You have built a good team, Adrian-san. People who are loyal not just to your company, but to you. That is rare. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises of continued cooperation. As they left Tanaka's building, Lena felt something release in her chest. Relief, pride, the satisfaction of having prevented a disaster. We did it, she said to Adrian as they climbed into the waiting car. You did it, he corrected. If you hadn't caught those first discrepancies, Chen would have succeeded. I just translated what was there. You saw what others missed. You connected patterns no one else noticed. Adrian stopped, seeming to struggle with words. You saved everything I've spent 5 years building. That's not nothing. Robert, sitting across from them, smiled slightly. My father used to say that the best partnerships are built on people who see what needs to be done and do it, without waiting for permission or praise. Miss Zhou, you would have impressed him greatly. Thank you, Lena said, her throat tight. That means a lot. The flight back to New York felt different than the flight out. Lighter. Adrian actually slept, his face relaxed in a way Lena had never seen. Robert worked on his laptop, coordinating with prosecutors in both Japan and the U.S., and Lena watched the clouds outside her window and tried to process everything that had happened. 3 months ago, she'd been barely scraping by, working 3 jobs, eating instant noodles for dinner. Now she was returning from Tokyo after helping expose an international conspiracy, sitting in a private jet next to one of the most powerful men in the industry. It felt surreal. You're thinking too loud, Adrian said without opening his eyes. Lena startled. I thought you were asleep. Light doze. Your energy is very loud when you're overthinking. He opened his eyes and looked at her. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's good. Great. Even. But, Lena hesitated, but I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for something to go wrong, for this to turn out to be too good to be true. That's the poverty mentality talking, Adrian said gently. When you've spent years in survival mode, success feels dangerous, like it can be taken away at any moment. Is that what it was like for you? When you first started succeeding? Yes. For years, I kept expecting everything to collapse, kept preparing for failure even while building success. He paused. The Hashimoto betrayal confirmed all those fears, proved that trust was dangerous, that letting people close meant giving them power to destroy you. But you're trusting Tanaka now, trusting this partnership. I'm trusting you, Adrian corrected. You're the one who caught the sabotage, who built the case, who made this partnership possible. So yes, I'm taking the risk, because you've proven yourself worthy of trust. The weight of those words settled over Lena. Adrian Vale, who trusted no one, was trusting her. I won't let you down, she said quietly. I know. They landed in New York Wednesday afternoon to news that Chen had been arrested. The prosecutors moved fast once they had Tanaka's cooperation and Robert's evidence. Chen was charged with corporate espionage, fraud, and conspiracy. His law firm immediately distanced themselves, claiming they'd had no knowledge of his activities. The story hit the business press by Thursday morning. Vale Industries and Tanaka Technologies had jointly exposed a major conspiracy, protecting their partnership and demonstrating exceptional corporate integrity. The board's concerns evaporated overnight. Investors praised Adrian's due diligence. It was a complete vindication. Friday evening, Adrian called Lena to his office. She'd been expecting it. There would be bonuses, probably, and formal recognition of her role. Maybe another promotion. What she wasn't expecting was to find Emma there too, sitting on Adrian's couch and coloring in a book. "Lena!" Emma jumped up and ran over, wrapping small arms around Lena's legs. "Daddy said you're a hero." "I wouldn't say hero. You saved Daddy's company. That makes you a hero." Emma looked up with absolute certainty. "Daddy says we're having a celebration dinner and you have to come." "Emma," Adrian said, mild warning in his voice. "We talked about asking, not demanding." "Please will you come to celebration dinner?" Emma amended, still clinging to Lena's legs. Lena looked at Adrian over Emma's head. He was watching them with an expression she couldn't quite read. Something soft, almost vulnerable. "I would love to come to celebration dinner," Lena said. They went to a small Italian restaurant in Adrian's neighborhood, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and waiters who knew the regulars by name. Emma ordered spaghetti and made a spectacular mess. Adrian had wine and actually laughed when Emma got sauce on her nose. And Lena sat there, watching them, feeling something shift and settle in her chest. This wasn't just her boss anymore. This was someone she cared about. Someone whose happiness mattered to her. Someone whose daughter had claimed a piece of her heart. Somewhere between the bathroom collision and Tokyo, between contract negotiations and conspiracy revelations, Lena had stopped just working for Adrian Vale. She'd started caring about him. And from the way he was looking at her across the table, the warmth in his eyes when Emma demanded Lena help cut her spaghetti, he might be starting to care about her too. It should have been terrifying, should have felt like a complication they couldn't afford. Instead, it just felt right. "Thank you," Adrian said later as they stood outside the restaurant. Emma had fallen asleep in his arms, her head on his shoulder. "For everything, the work, the dedication, for being there." "You already thanked me, multiple times." "I don't think I can thank you enough." He shifted Emma's weight slightly. "I know we have a professional relationship. I know there are boundaries, but Lena, you've become important, to both of us." Lena's heart was pounding. "You've become important to me, too." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Adrian looked like he wanted to say more, but Emma stirred in his arms, mumbling sleepily. "I should get her home," he said. "Yeah, of course." He hesitated, then, "I'll see you Monday." "Monday," Lena confirmed. She watched him walk to his car, watched him carefully buckle Emma into her seat, watched them drive away. Then she stood on the sidewalk in the cool evening air and let herself feel the full weight of what was happening. She was falling for Adrian Vale, her boss, a billionaire single father with trust issues and a complicated past. This could end badly, could cost her everything she'd worked for. But as Lena thought about the way Adrian had looked at her across the dinner table, the way Emma had fallen asleep holding her hand, she realized something. Some risks were worth taking, and this one might just be worth everything. Monday came with rain again, the kind that turned New York streets into rivers and made everyone miserable. Lena arrived at the office soaked despite her umbrella, her hair dripping, her supposedly waterproof jacket having failed spectacularly. She was smiling anyway. The weekend had been strange. Good strange. She'd spent Saturday helping Jenna move furniture and Sunday doing absolutely nothing except reading a book she'd bought months ago but never had time for. Normal things, peaceful things, the kind of things people did when they weren't constantly fighting to survive. And through it all, she'd thought about Friday night, about Adrian's words, about the way Emma had hugged her goodbye, whispering, "I love you, Lena," in that unselfconscious way children had, about the way Adrian had looked at her when Emma said it, like something in him was breaking open. "You're glowing," Margaret said when Lena passed her in the hallway. "Either you won the lottery or something very good happened. Just had a nice weekend." "Uh-huh, sure." Margaret's smile was knowing. "Word of advice, honey. Whatever's making you look like that, hold on to it. Life's too short for anything less." Lena's office felt different today. Same desk, same view, same slightly uncomfortable chair. But it felt like hers now. Like she'd earned the right to be here, had proven she belonged. She was reviewing the final Tanaka contract, clean version, no sabotage, just honest business, when her phone rang. "Lena Joe." "It's David. Mr. Vale wants to see you, his office, whenever you're available." Lena's stomach did that familiar flip. "I'll be right up." The executive floor was buzzing with activity. News of the Chen arrest had made Vale Industries look brilliant, and everyone was riding the high of positive press. People nodded at Lena as she passed, and she caught fragments of conversation. Heard she's the one who caught it. 3 months and already Adrian's go-to, youngest strategic consultant in company history. It should have felt good. It did feel good, but it also felt heavy, like she was carrying expectations she wasn't sure she could meet. Adrian's office door was open. He stood by the windows, phone to his ear, and waved her in without interrupting his conversation. Understand the board's concerns, Michael, but the answer is still no. We're not accelerating the merger timeline just to make the quarterly earnings look better. These things take time to do right. A pause. Then they'll have to live with their disappointment. I'll see you at Thursday's meeting. He hung up and turned to Lena. The board's getting greedy. Success makes people impatient for more success. Sounds exhausting. It is. Adrian gestured to the sitting area. Sit, please. This is going to take a while. Lena sat on the leather couch, the same one where she'd found Emma coloring. Adrian took the chair across from her, which felt significant somehow. Not behind his desk, maintaining professional distance, but here, closer, more personal. The board wants to officially recognize your contribution to exposing Chen's sabotage, Adrian said. Public commendation, press release, the works. That's not necessary. It's absolutely necessary. You deserve credit for your work. He paused. But I wanted to ask you first. Public recognition means attention, media interest, people digging into your background. Are you comfortable with that? Lena thought about her student loans, her dead father, her years of struggling to make rent. Thought about how the press might frame it. Poor girl makes good Cinderella story, all the narratives that reduced actual work to luck and charity. Will it help the company? She asked. Probably. Shows we have strong talent at all levels, not just the executive suite. Then I'm comfortable with it. Adrian studied her for a moment. You always do that. Put the work first, yourself second. That's just being professional. No, it's more than that. It's... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. Lena, there's something I need to say, and I need you to listen to all of it before you respond. Can you do that? Her heart started pounding. Okay. Adrian leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. When you walked into my bathroom 4 months ago, I was furious. Not just at the intrusion, but at the disruption. I'd built my entire life around control, around keeping things contained and predictable. And then here was this panicked woman with wet resume pages completely destroying my morning routine. Lena smiled despite her nervousness. Not my finest moment. Let me finish. But his mouth quirked slightly. I expected you to quit within a week. The pressure I put on you, the impossible deadlines, the constant testing, I was trying to make you fail. Trying to prove that my instinct to keep people at a distance was right. Why? Because if you failed, I could stay safe. Could keep my walls up, could keep Emma safe from people who might leave, might disappoint, might betray. Adrian's voice was quiet but steady. But you didn't fail. You exceeded every expectation. You saw things others missed. You worked harder than anyone I've ever known. And somewhere between Tokyo and the Chen investigation, I realized something terrifying. What? I trust you. He said it like a confession. I trust you with my business, with my reputation, with my daughter. And trust is something I swore I'd never give anyone again. Lena's throat was tight. Adrian, I'm not finished. He took a breath. I'm also 42 years old with a 4-year-old daughter and approximately 1,000 issues related to loss and betrayal. I work too much. I'm not good at talking about feelings. I have a board of directors who would have opinions about my personal life and a daughter who needs stability, not complications. I know all that. And knowing all that, I still need to tell you that what I feel for you is not professional. It stopped being professional weeks ago, maybe months ago. Every time you catch something no one else sees, every time you stand up in a meeting and prove you belong there, every time Emma talks about you. His voice caught slightly. You've become essential, not just to the company, to me. The words hung in the air between them. Lena felt like she couldn't breathe, like the entire world had narrowed to this moment. I know there are problems, Adrian continued. Power dynamics, workplace ethics, the fact that I'm your boss and this could be incredibly complicated. And if you want to keep things professional, if this is unwelcome or uncomfortable, I'll respect that completely. Nothing changes about your job, your position. I needed you to know. Lena sat with it for a moment. The confession, the vulnerability. Adrian Vale, who never let anyone close, choosing to let her in. Can I talk now? She asked. Please. When I took this job, I was desperate, broke, exhausted, running on fumes and hope. I thought if I could just get my foot in the door, prove myself, maybe I'd finally have some stability. She met his eyes. I never expected to care about the work beyond the paycheck, never expected to care about the people beyond professional courtesy. But then there was Tokyo and the gala and Emma falling asleep in my lap and telling me her daddy needed someone to make his eyes smile. Lena's voice was steady despite the emotion behind it. And I realized I wasn't just working for you anymore. I was working with you. And somewhere in there, I started caring about whether you smiled, whether you slept enough, whether you were okay. Lena, I'm 30 years old, she continued. I have student loans and a dead father and about $6 in my savings account from before this job. I share a studio apartment with my best friend because I refuse to leave her behind. I'm not sophisticated or polished or any of the things someone in your position probably should want. I don't care about any of that. I know. That's what scares me. Lena took a breath. Because I could fall for you, Adrian. Could already be falling, if I'm honest. And if this goes wrong, I don't just lose a job. I lose something that's become important to me. I lose you. I lose Emma. And if it goes right, I don't know what right looks like. I don't know how we navigate the power dynamic, or the office politics, or the fact that I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not in survival mode. She paused. But I want to try. If you're willing to be patient while I figure it out, I want to try. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, crossed to the couch, and sat beside her. Close enough that Lena could feel the warmth of him, could see the silver threading through his hair, could count the worry lines around his eyes. I can be patient, he said quietly. I've waited 5 years to let anyone close. I can wait however long you need. What about Emma? Emma already loves you. That part's settled. A slight smile. The rest we figure out together. Slowly, no pressure, no expectations beyond honesty. And work? Work is work. Professional boundaries stay professional. We're both too good at our jobs to let this compromise that. Adrian hesitated, then took her hand. His palm was warm, his grip gentle. But outside these walls, outside office hours, we try. We see if this thing between us is real or just proximity and adrenaline. Lena looked at their joined hands. Hers still bore the calluses from years of manual work, the cheap manicure she'd given herself. His were smooth, well-maintained, the hands of someone who'd never had to scrub floors or work double shifts. But they fit together anyway. Okay, she said, we try. The trying turned out to be both easier and harder than Lena expected. Easier because being around Adrian felt natural. They had lunch together, sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with Emma. They talked about work, about books, about the small observations that made up daily life. Adrian was funny when he let himself be, dry and sharp in a way that caught Lena off guard and made her laugh. Harder because the office noticed. People talked, whispered about special treatment, about favoritism, about whether Lena had earned her position or slept her way into it. Margaret shut down the worst of it with a glare that could freeze water. Catherine made it clear that anyone questioning Lena's competence would answer to her. But the whispers didn't completely stop. Ignore them, Jenna said when Lena came home frustrated one evening. People are always going to have opinions. What matters is whether you're doing good work. I am doing good work. Exactly. So let them talk. You know the truth. The truth was that Lena worked harder than ever, partially to prove she deserved her position, but mostly because she genuinely loved the work. The challenge of translation, the satisfaction of clear communication, the feeling of being good at something that mattered. 3 weeks after the conversation in Adrian's office, the Tanaka partnership officially launched. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Vale Industries' stock price jumped. The board meeting that Adrian had been dreading turned into a congratulatory session. And at the celebration party the company threw, Lena stood to the side watching Adrian give a speech about integrity and due diligence and building partnerships on trust. His eyes found hers in the crowd, held for a moment. Something passed between them that felt like recognition, like promise. Emma's 5th birthday fell on a Saturday in late October. Adrian had been anxious about it for weeks, worrying about the party, the guests, whether Emma would enjoy it or get overwhelmed. "It's going to be fine," Lena had assured him. "She's excited. She picked out her own cake design. That's a good sign." She also invited 23 kids from her preschool. 23. I don't even know that many adults I like. "Good thing you have help." Lena had volunteered without hesitation, and now she stood in Adrian's apartment, a massive, beautiful space overlooking Central Park, helping hang decorations while Emma supervised with the gravity of a small general. "The balloons need to be higher, Lena. Higher!" "Any higher and they'll be on the ceiling. That's where balloons go." Adrian appeared from the kitchen, wearing jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, more relaxed. "Emma, stop bossing Lena around." "I'm not bossing, I'm directing." "Where'd she learn that?" Lena asked, laughing. "I have no idea." Adrian's tone suggested he knew exactly where. "Come on, birthday girl, let's check on your cake." The party was chaos. Good chaos. 23 5-year-olds running around, screaming, playing games that had rules known only to them. Parents stood around drinking coffee and making small talk, and Lena found herself chatting with them like she belonged there. Like this was her life now. "You're Adrian's girlfriend?" one mother asked, friendly curiosity in her voice. Lena hesitated. They hadn't put a label on it yet, hadn't made anything official. "She's my friend," Emma announced, appearing at Lena's side. "And Daddy's friend, but mostly mine." "I see," the mother said, smiling. "Well, you're very lucky to have such a good friend." After cake and presents and the gradual departure of overstimulated children, Lena helped clean up while Emma crashed on the couch, frosting covered and happy. "Thank you," Adrian said, loading the dishwasher. "I would have lost my mind without you here." "It was fun. Exhausting, but fun. You're good with kids. Natural." "I just remember what it was like being one. Wanting to be heard, taken seriously, not talked down to." Adrian was quiet for a moment, then, "Would you stay for dinner? I'm making pasta. Nothing fancy, but I'd love to." They cooked together, moving around Adrian's enormous kitchen with surprising ease. Emma woke up from her sugar crash and demanded to help, which mostly meant she stood on a stool and narrated everything they were doing. "Daddy's putting in the garlic. That's going to make it smell good. Lena's stirring. She's very good at stirring. I'm supervising. That's the most important job." They ate at the kitchen table because the formal dining room felt too big, too impersonal. Emma told them in excruciating detail about every present she'd received, rating them on a scale of pretty good to best thing ever. After dinner, Lena helped put Emma to bed. The little girl's room was perfect, not magazine perfect, but lived-in perfect. Toys scattered on shelves, drawings taped to the walls, a small reading corner with cushions, and a lamp. "Will you read to me?" Emma asked, already in pajamas covered with cartoon astronauts. "If your dad says it's okay." "It's okay," Adrian said from the doorway. Lena read 3 books because Emma was an excellent negotiator and just one more somehow became 3. By the 3rd book, Emma was fighting sleep, her eyes drooping. "Lena?" "Yeah, sweetheart? Are you going to stay?" "I'll be here until you fall asleep." "No, I mean stay, like forever." Lena's heart squeezed. She glanced at Adrian, who'd gone very still. "I'm not going anywhere," she said carefully. "I'll be around for a long time." "Good," Emma yawned. "I love you." "I love you too." Emma was asleep within minutes. Lena stayed a bit longer, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of those words. "I love you." Said so easily, so completely, the way only children could. When she finally left the room, Adrian was waiting in the hallway. "I'm sorry if that was uncomfortable," he said quietly. "She gets attached quickly." "It wasn't uncomfortable. It was—" Lena struggled for words. "It was honest. She means it, and I mean it back." "Lena, I need you to understand something." Adrian's voice was serious. "Emma's already lost one parent. If you're going to be in her life, in our lives, I need to know you're committed. Not to me, I'm an adult, I can handle heartbreak. But Emma, she can't lose someone else." "I'm not going anywhere," Lena said, echoing her words to Emma. "I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out. But Adrian, when I say I'm in, I'm in. I don't do things halfway." Something in Adrian's expression cracked open. He pulled her close, and Lena went willingly, wrapping her arms around him and feeling the tension drain from his body. I don't know how to do this, he whispered against her hair. How to be in a relationship, how to let someone in. I'm going to mess up. So am I. We'll mess up together. They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, and Lena thought about all the walls Adrian had built, all the ways he'd protected himself from pain, and she thought about how he was choosing, deliberately, to lower those walls for her. The months that followed weren't perfect. They had their first fight in December about work-life balance and whether Lena was taking on too much. Adrian accused her of not knowing how to rest. Lena accused him of being controlling. They both had points. They learned to compromise. Lena learned to set boundaries, to say no to projects that would stretch her too thin. Adrian learned to step back, to trust that Lena could handle herself without his intervention. Emma learned that sometimes grown-ups got upset with each other but still loved each other. An important lesson, Adrian noted, and one he'd never learned as a child. In February, Lena finally moved out of Jenna's apartment. Not into Adrian's place, they both agreed it was too soon for that, but into her own one-bedroom in a better neighborhood. Jenna threw her a going-away party that was really just the two of them eating takeout and crying. I'm so proud of you, Jenna said. Look at you, your own place, a career, a guy who looks at you like you hung the moon. I'm terrified I'm going to wake up and it'll all be gone. That's the thing about good things, Len. They feel fragile because we're not used to them. But just because something can break doesn't mean it will. The Tanaka partnership thrived. By spring, they were ahead of projections, expanding into 3 new markets. Adrian gave Lena full oversight of the translation and cultural consulting division, a role that came with a salary she still couldn't quite believe. She paid off her student loans, all of them, sent the final payment, and then sat in her apartment and cried. Her father would have been proud. In April, Robert Hashimoto visited New York for business. He took Lena and Adrian to dinner, and over expensive sushi, he told them that Chen had been sentenced to 8 years in prison. My father can rest now, Robert said quietly, knowing the man who destroyed him faced consequences. I'm sorry it took so long, Adrian said. No, it took exactly as long as it needed to. Robert looked at Lena. My father used to say that sometimes the best revenge is building something so good, so strong, that those who tried to destroy you become irrelevant. You've done that, Adrian, and Miss Jo, you helped make it possible. After Robert left, Adrian and Lena walked through Central Park. It was a warm night, spring finally arriving after a brutal winter. I've been thinking, Adrian said, about the future, about what I want. And? I want Emma to grow up seeing what healthy partnership looks like. I want her to understand that trust is possible, that people can be there for each other. He stopped walking, turned to face Lena. I want her to see what I see when I look at you, someone strong, capable, kind, someone who chose to stay when leaving would have been easier. Adrian, I'm not proposing, not yet. We've only been together 6 months and I want to do this right, but Lena, I need you to know, this isn't casual for me. This is it. You're it. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. You're it for me too. They kissed under a street lamp like something out of a movie, and Lena thought about the terrified woman who'd stumbled into the wrong room 9 months ago. How far she'd come. How much she'd grown. How she'd learned that some walls were meant to be climbed and some distances were meant to be closed. Emma's elementary school had a career day in May. Adrian was supposed to go, talk about running a business, but he got stuck in an emergency board meeting. Lena went instead. She stood in front of 26-year-olds and talked about languages, about how words could build bridges between people who seemed completely different. She brought examples, showed them how the same phrase sounded in 5 different languages, let them try to guess what it meant. Emma sat in the front row, beaming with pride. Afterward, Emma's teacher pulled Lena aside. Emma talks about you constantly, her father's girlfriend who knows a million languages and saved his company from bad guys. That's a bit dramatic, Lena said, laughing. Maybe, but it's how Emma sees you, as someone brave and smart who chose her family. The teacher smiled. That's not a small thing, Miss Jo. That night, Lena told Adrian about it. They were at his place, Emma asleep, the two of them curled up on the couch with wine and the kind of comfortable silence that came from really knowing someone. Emma's teacher called us a family, Lena said. Does that scare you? A little, but it also feels right. Adrian set down his wine glass. Move in with us. What? I know it's only been 8 months. I know it's fast. But Emma asks me every week when you're going to live here. And honestly, I want to know the answer too. I want you here. I want to come home and have you be here. I want Emma to have the stability of knowing you're not going anywhere. Lena thought about her apartment, her hard-won independence, thought about how she'd fought for space that was just hers. Then she thought about Emma's laugh, about Adrian's smile, about Sunday mornings and shared dinners and the life they were building together. Okay, she said. Okay? Yes, I'll move in. Adrian kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Lena kissed him back, feeling the rightness of the decision settle into her bones. She moved in over the 4th of July weekend. Jenna helped, making jokes about how Lena was abandoning her for a rich guy and a cute kid. You better still have time for me, Jenna said, only half joking. Always. You're my person, and he's your person now too. Weird how that works, having more than one person. The best kind of weird. Living with Adrian and Emma was an adjustment. Good, but different. Lena learned Adrian's morning routine, learned that he needed coffee before conversation, learned that Emma was not a morning person and required gentle coaxing to get ready for school. She learned to leave space for grief. Some nights, Adrian would get quiet, lost in memories of the partnership that failed, the mentor who died, the years he'd spent alone. Lena learned not to push, just to be there. And Emma had moments too, days when she'd ask about her mother, wanting stories Adrian didn't have. Lena learned to sit with that sadness, to acknowledge it without trying to fix it. They were a family now. Imperfect and still figuring things out, but a family. In September, Adrian proposed. Not at a fancy restaurant or some grand public gesture, just the three of them in the park. Emma feeding ducks while Adrian and Lena sat on a bench. I've been carrying this around for 2 weeks, Adrian said, pulling out a ring box, waiting for the perfect moment. But then I realized, this is the perfect moment. Just us. Just normal. The ring was beautiful, simple but elegant, exactly what Lena would have chosen. Yes, she said, before he could even ask the question. Whatever you're about to say, the answer is yes. I haven't asked yet. I don't care. Yes. Adrian laughed, actually laughed, and slipped the ring on her finger. Lena Jo, will you marry me? Will you be Emma's family and my partner and put up with both of us for the rest of your life? Yes, absolutely yes. Emma noticed the commotion and came running over. When she saw the ring, she shrieked loud enough to scare the ducks. You're getting married! Does this mean Lena's my mom now? We'll figure out what that means together, Lena said, pulling Emma into a hug. But yes, I'm your family now. Officially. Best day ever, Emma declared. Even better than my birthday. They got married in April, a year and a half after Lena had walked into the wrong room. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Emma was the flower girl and took her job very seriously, throwing petals with intense concentration. Margaret cried. Catherine smiled. Robert Hashimoto attended and told Lena that his father would have loved her. And as Lena stood at the altar, looking at Adrian, she thought about walls and bridges and the courage it took to trust again. Thought about how she'd been so afraid of losing everything that she'd almost missed out on gaining everything. The reception was at Adrian's apartment, their apartment now. Intimate, warm, full of laughter and love, and the kind of joy that came from choosing every day to show up for each other. Late in the evening, after most guests had left, Lena found herself on the balcony. The city spread out below, millions of lights, millions of lives. Adrian joined her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Happy? He asked. Terrified and happy. Is that allowed? I think that's the only way anyone actually lives. Scared, but doing it anyway. Lena leaned back against him. Thank you. For what? For taking a chance on the panicked woman with wet resume pages. For seeing something in me I didn't see in myself. For letting me in. Thank you for being worth letting in. For being patient while I figured out how to trust again. For loving Emma. For loving me despite all my damage. We're all damaged, Lena said softly. The trick is finding someone whose damage fits with yours. Whose cracks you can fill while they fill yours.
Emma appeared in the doorway, sleepy in her flower girl dress. Are you guys being mushy again? Definitely mushy, Adrian confirmed. Gross. But Emma was smiling as she wedged herself between them. Can we have cake for breakfast tomorrow? Absolutely not, Lena and Adrian said in unison. Worth a try.
They stood there together, the three of them, looking out at the city. A family built not from perfection, but from choice, from showing up, from the courage to try. Lena thought about her father, about the lessons he'd taught her. Languages are bridges, trust is earned. The best translators understand that meaning matters more than words. She'd spent her life building bridges between languages. Now she'd learned to build bridges between people, between past and future, between fear and trust, between what was broken and what could be healed. It wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Some days she and Adrian clashed over parenting styles or work stress. Some days Emma had meltdowns about homework or friendship drama. But they figured it out together, because that was the thing about walls. They kept pain out, but they also kept love out. And at some point you had to choose. Stay safe and alone, or take the risk and open the door. Adrian had chosen to open the door. So had Lena. And what they found on the other side was better than either of them had imagined. Not perfect, not smooth, not the fairy tale ending where everything magically worked out. But real, messy, true. The kind of love that was built, not given. The kind that required work and patience and forgiveness and the daily choice to stay, even when leaving would be easier. As they headed back inside, Emma already half asleep on Adrian's shoulder, Lena took one last look at the city. All those lights, all those lives, all those stories. Hers had started with a wrong turn and an open door. And it had led her exactly where she needed to be. Home.